The team boarded the Eldridge. The deck plates were hot. Not warm, hot. The rubber soles of their boots sizzled slightly. "Check your corners," Lockdown ordered. "Breacher, up front." Sledge, a massive man carrying a breaching shotgun and a fire axe, stepped onto the deck. "It's quiet, Cap," Sledge whispered. "Too quiet. Where's the watch?" They moved toward the bridge. The air shimmered around them. Doc Eon reached out to touch a railing. His hand passed through the metal for a second, then solidified. He pulled back, gasping. "Don't touch anything without gloves," Doc hissed. "The molecular structure is unstable. The ship is phasing." They found the first sailor near the forward gun mount. He was standing upright, looking out to sea. He wasn't moving. "Hey, sailor," Sledge called. The sailor didn't answer. Sledge walked around to face him. He stopped dead. He gagged. The sailor wasn't just standing on the deck. He was part of the deck. His boots and shins were fused into the solid steel plating. The metal had become liquid, swallowed his legs, and then hardened again. The sailor was alive. He was looking at Sledge with wide, unblinking eyes. He was screaming, but no sound came out. His lungs were filled with steel dust. "God in heaven," Lockdown whispered. "What did they do?" The team boarded the Eldridge. The deck plates were hot. Not warm, hot. The rubber soles of their boots sizzled slightly. "Check your corners," Lockdown ordered. "Breacher, up front." Sledge, a massive man carrying a breaching shotgun and a fire axe, stepped onto the deck. "It's quiet, Cap," Sledge whispered. "Too quiet. Where's the watch?" They moved toward the bridge. The air shimmered around them. Doc Eon reached out to touch a railing. His hand passed through the metal for a second, then solidified. He pulled back, gasping. "Don't touch anything without gloves," Doc hissed. "The molecular structure is unstable. The ship is phasing." They found the first sailor near the forward gun mount. He was standing upright, looking out to sea. He wasn't moving. "Hey, sailor," Sledge called. The sailor didn't answer. Sledge walked around to face him. He stopped dead. He gagged. The sailor wasn't just standing on the deck. He was part of the deck. His boots and shins were fused into the solid steel plating. The metal had become liquid, swallowed his legs, and then hardened again. The sailor was alive. He was looking at Sledge with wide, unblinking eyes. He was screaming, but no sound came out. His lungs were filled with steel dust. "God in heaven," Lockdown whispered. "What did they do?" "Kill him," Doc Eon said coldly. "He's suffering." Lockdown raised his pistol. He put a bullet in the sailor's head. It was an act of mercy. They moved on. The horror was just beginning. As they approached the superstructure, they saw more anomalies. Two sailors were fused together, shoulder to shoulder, their skin joined in a twisted mass of flesh. They were wailing in harmony. Another man was walking in circles, burning with a green fire that didn't consume him. He laughed maniacally, pointing at things that weren't there. "The neural pathways are fried," Doc observed, taking notes. "The teleportation field scrambled their brains." "Cut the science, Doc," Sledge growled, gripping his axe. "This is a haunted house." Suddenly, the ship lurched. The green fog thickened. A voice came over the ship's intercom. It was distorted, slowed down, demonic. "Can you see it?" "Who's that?" Lockdown barked. "That's the captain," Doc said. "Captain Henderson. He's supposed to be on the bridge." "Let's go say hello," Lockdown ordered. "Sledge, take the door." They climbed the ladder to the bridge. The metal was vibrating so hard it made their teeth hurt. Sledge kicked the door to the bridge open. Inside, it was a scene from a nightmare. The helm, steering wheel, was spinning by itself. Maps were floating in zero gravity, suspended in the air. And Captain Henderson, he wasn't at the wheel. He was in the wall. Half of his body, his left arm, shoulder, and half his head protruded from the steel bulkhead. The rest of him was buried inside the metal. His one visible eye swiveled to look at them. His mouth opened. "It never stops," the captain wheezed. "Secure the bridge," Lockdown shouted, trying to maintain order. "We can't secure this," Sledge yelled. "The whole ship is alive." Doc Eon rushed to the ship's logbook, which was floating near the ceiling. He grabbed it. "The generators," Doc read frantically. "The magnetic generators in the hold. They are still running. They are keeping the portal open. If we don't shut them down, the ship will jump again." "Jump where?" Sledge asked. "Not where." Doc looked at his watch, which was now spinning forward. "If we jump with it, we might never come back." "We have to get below deck," Lockdown decided. "Engine room. Destroy the generators." They left the bridge. The corridor leading down was dark. The lights flickered. Sometimes they were electric bulbs. Sometimes they were old oil lamps. Sometimes they looked like futuristic neon. Time was bleeding. They reached a stairwell. "Wait!" Whisper, the team scout, held up a hand. He was a small man with ears like a bat. "Listen!" From the darkness below they heard footsteps, heavy, metallic footsteps. Clang, clang, clang. "Is that a survivor?" Sledge asked. "No," Whisper said, racking the slide of his Thompson. "Survivors scream. That thing is hunting." Out of the shadows stepped a figure. It wore a U.S. Navy uniform, but it was huge, bloated. Its skin had turned gray and hard like steel. Its eyes were glowing green. It held a giant wrench as a weapon. It was a crew member who had absorbed so much energy he had become a golem of metal and rage. "Unauthorized personnel," the thing droned. It swung the wrench. It smashed the steel railing like it was a twig. "Open fire!" Lockdown screamed. The thing in the hallway didn't flinch. Lockdown emptied his Thompson into the creature's chest. The .45 caliber slugs flattened against the gray metallic skin like they were hitting a tank. Ping, ping, ping. The creature roared, a sound like grinding gears. It swung the massive pipe wrench. Sledge ducked just in time. The wrench smashed into the bulkhead, denting the solid steel. "It's armored," Sledge yelled, racking his shotgun. "Slug round, going hot." He fired a 12-gauge solid slug point blank into the creature's face. The head snapped back. Metal skin cracked, revealing not blood, but green light underneath. The creature wasn't bleeding. It was leaking radiation. "It's drawing power from the ship," Doc Eon screamed, looking at his Geiger counter. "The magnetic field is sustaining it. We have to disrupt the field." Doc pulled a prototype device from his pack, a degaussing grenade, an experimental EMP weapon. "Fire in the hole!" He threw it. The grenade detonated with a blue flash of static electricity. The creature convulsed. The green light in its eyes flickered and died. Its metal skin rusted instantly, turning to dust. The thing collapsed into a pile of scrap metal and bone. Sledge kicked the pile. It crumbled. "Ashes to ashes," Sledge spat. "Dust to rust." They stepped over the remains and headed for the engine room stairs. But as they descended, something was wrong. They walked down one flight, then another, then another. They should have reached the hold by now, but the stairs kept going. "Hold up," Whisper said, his voice trembling. "We've passed Deck 3 twice." He pointed to a sign on the wall. "Deck 3. They walked down 10 more steps. The sign appeared again. Deck 3. It's a loop, Dakian realized. The space-time geometry is folded. We are walking in a circle. "How do we break it?" Lockdown asked. "We don't walk," Doc said. "We jump." He pointed over the railing into the dark shaft in the center of the stairwell. "Gravity might still be constant. If we jump, we might bypass the loop." It was insane, jumping into the dark machinery of a phasing ship. "I hate science," Sledge grumbled. He vaulted over the railing. They fell through the darkness. Green mist rushed past them. They fell for seconds that felt like hours. Thud. They landed on a metal grating. They were in the engine room. The engine room was vast, filled with the hum of the massive turbines. But the sound wasn't steady. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Thrum, thrum, thrum. In the center of the room stood the generators, 4 massive Tesla coils, arcing with electricity. But Sledge wasn't looking at the generators. He was looking at the floor. "Cap," Sledge whispered, "you need to see this." Lying on the floor, in a pool of fresh blood, was a body. It was an American soldier, gray fatigues, Thompson submachine gun. Lockdown walked over. He turned the body over. He stared at the face. It was Sledge. The dead man was Sledge, but Sledge was standing right next to him, alive. The dead version of Sledge looked older. His beard was grayer, and he had a hole in his chest that looked like it was made by an energy weapon. "That's me," Sledge whispered, touching his own face. How is that me?" "Time dilation," Dakian said, his face pale. "This ship exists in multiple timelines at once. This is a warning. This is what happens to us if we fail." Lockdown grabbed Sledge by the shoulder. "You aren't dead yet, Marine. Don't look at it. Focus on the mission." They moved toward the generators. The air here was heavy. Gravity was fluctuating. One minute, they felt like they weighed 500 pounds. The next, they were nearly floating. Tools, wrenches, hammers, bolts were orbiting the generators like moons around a planet. "The core is critical," Doc Eon shouted over the hum. "We need to plant the charges on the main coupling. If we sever the connection, the ship snaps back to reality." Lockdown nodded. "Whisper, you and me on the left. Sledge, Doc, take the right." They split up. Whisper moved toward the left turbine. He had to dodge floating debris. A wrench floated past his head. He reached the coupling. He pulled a block of C4 explosives from his bag. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the machinery. It wasn't a mutant, it was a Nazi. An SS officer, wearing a uniform that looked burnt and phased. He stepped out of the air as if he had teleported. "You are not supposed to be here," the Nazi said in English. His voice echoed. "This technology belongs to the Reich." "Nazis?" Whisper yelled. "On a U.S. ship?" "The experiment," the Nazi smiled, and his teeth were made of glass. "It opened doors to many places. We found the door first." It wasn't just one Nazi. Shadows flickered all around the engine room. German soldiers materialized, then disappeared, then reappeared closer. They were time raiders, Nazis from 1945 trying to steal the tech from 1943. "Open fire!" Lockdown screamed. The battle was chaotic. The Americans fired their Thompsons. The bullets traveled in slow motion near the generators, curving due to the magnetic field. The Nazis fired back with energy weapons, strange, bulky rifles that shot bolts of blue plasma. Sledge took cover behind a turbine. "Since when do Krauts have ray guns? Since they stole them from the future," Doc yelled, arming a charge. One of the plasma bolts hit the dead version of Sledge on the floor, vaporizing it. "Hey!" Living Sledge yelled. "That's my corpse! Show some respect!" He stood up and fired his shotgun. The slug hit a Nazi in the chest. The Nazi didn't die. He glitched. His body distorted like a bad TV signal, then vanished with a scream. "They aren't real!" Doc shouted. "They are projections. Destroy the generator, and you destroy the bridge they walked on."
"Charge is set," WWII screamed. 30 seconds! The German shadows were closing in. They weren't shooting anymore. They were reaching out with translucent hands, trying to drag the Americans into their timeline. Lockdown emptied his magazine into a flickering SS officer. "Fall back! To the upper deck!" They scrambled up the ladder. Gravity was fighting them. The ship was tilting, not in the water, but in dimension. The floor became the wall became the ceiling. They clawed their way out of the engine room just as the timer hit 0. Kaboom! The C4 charges detonated on the main generator coupling. The sound wasn't a bang, it was a scream, the scream of the universe breaking. The magnetic field collapsed inward. The green fog didn't disperse, it swallowed them whole. The USS Eldridge vanished from the Philadelphia timeline. But it didn't arrive in Norfolk immediately. For 10 seconds, the ship existed nowhere. They weren't on Earth anymore. Lockdown opened his eyes. He was floating above the deck. Around the ship, there was no ocean. There was only a churning green abyss. Shapes moved in the fog, huge serpentine shapes that looked like electricity given life. Whisper was screaming, holding his head. "I can hear them. They're eating the radio waves. They're screaming." WWII looked at his skin. It was transparent. He could see his own veins, his bones, his beating heart. "We are in the hyperspace conduit," Doc whispered, fascinated and terrified. "We are data. We are just information waiting to be reassembled." But the reassembly was glitching. Sledge was floating near the steel bulkhead. The metal wall began to ripple like water. It reached out. It grabbed Sledge's leg. "Cap! Help!" Sledge yelled. Lockdown reached out, but his hand passed through Sledge's arm like smoke. The ship was solidifying around them. The reality was crashing back in. "Brace for impact!" Lockdown roared. Slam. The USS Eldridge materialized in the Norfolk Navy Yard with a thunderclap that shattered windows for 3 miles. The ship dropped 10 feet into the water. A massive wave washed over the deck. Lockdown hit the steel floor hard. He coughed up bile. He was solid again. The green fog was dissipating. "Sound off?" Lockdown choked out. "Doc, here. Whisper, here. Sledge?" Silence. Lockdown stood up. He walked to the bulkhead where he had last seen the giant. He froze. Sledge was there, but he wasn't standing next to the wall. He was the wall. The teleportation had ended while Sledge was touching the steel. The molecules had bonded. Sledge's chest and head were protruding from the solid metal plate. His arms were buried deep inside the steel. He was alive. His eyes were darting around in panic. He tried to take a breath, but his lungs were encased in iron. "Cap," Sledge wheezed. "It's heavy." WWII ran over with a scanner. He checked Sledge, then looked at Lockdown with a grim shake of his head.
"He's fused on a cellular level," Doc whispered. "If we cut him out, he dies. If we leave him, he dies slowly." Lockdown looked at his friend, the toughest man in the unit, the man who fought metal monsters with a shotgun. Now he was a figurehead on a ghost ship. Sledge looked at Lockdown. He knew. "Do it, Cap," Sledge whispered. "Don't let the scientists put me in a jar."
Lockdown drew his Colt 45. His hand didn't shake. The erasers didn't shake. "See you on the other side, brother," Lockdown said. Bang! The shot echoed across the empty harbor. Lockdown holstered his weapon. He turned to the survivors. "Clean it up," he ordered. "Burn the logs. Destroy the equipment. We were never here." They worked for 3 hours. They removed the Time Raiders' weapons, which had melted into slag. They removed the strange generators. As they left the ship, a team of regular Navy MPs arrived to secure the vessel. The MPs looked at the ship. They saw the burns. They saw the sailors fused into the deck, the ones the team couldn't remove. One MP vomited. Lockdown walked past the MP commander. "What happened here, Captain?" the MP asked, horrified. Lockdown lit a cigarette. The flame illuminated his tired, hollow face. "Nothing," Lockdown said. "Just a training accident. Marsh gas, swamp lights." "And the men in the walls?" Lockdown stopped. He looked back at the Eldridge. Sculptures. Modern art. The USS Eldridge was repaired. The fused bodies were cut out and buried in unmarked graves in Arlington. The families were told they died at sea. The ship served in the Pacific. Then it was sold to the Greek Navy. It served for another 40 years, but sailors who served on her reported strange things. They said that sometimes, in the dead of night, you could hear screaming coming from the bulkheads. They said that if you put your hand on the steel wall of the engine room, you could feel a heartbeat. The Philadelphia experiment was officially denied. Project Rainbow never existed. But somewhere in a CIA vault, there is a jar containing a human heart encased in steel. A reminder that there are doors in the universe that should never be opened. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button. Subscribe. The truth is in the archives, and we are just digging it up.